we've been working on that law and that set aside for many, many years to get that designation for veterans, and there was a lot of people in line. And I was listening to some of the last class, and um, um, you know, as when I first started, the common refrain was learn the business, be a good sub, and and I think that can be good advice, although incomplete sometimes, because if you're coming out of the military like some of the guys were before, if you're retiring, if you have that network of people that you can go back to, that's a great way to start. But if you're like me and you were a nobody and didn't know anybody, and you go meet somebody from booze at a table at an event. uh,
Yeah.
they're lower on the totem pole than you. You call them 2 days later, you're like, hey, I've got an opportunity. He's like, great, I got 17 bosses, that I have to get through 22 gate stages, in order to get this opportunity through. So early on, I decided that if I was going to climb one tree, it was going to be the prime tree. And
Yeah.
and so my strategy and what I did was I started priming small stuff that I could bootstrap. I had a lady in Alaska at Fort Wainwright. She was in the lending closet. So when people arrived, on orders, if they didn't have their stuff there, the lending closet would give them pots and pans, sheets and stuff. So like that was my first prime contract, one person in Fort Wainwright, Alaska. I had three people in a warehouse at NIST on a month by month contract for 18 months.
Yeah.
But a bunch of little contracts that I would put together. They'd be small. Sometimes they'd be 3 months. Sometimes they'd be a year. But then, they start to build off of each other, and you can start to, you start to sort of define if, like for me, I'm not a technical person. I'm not a technical writer. I'm not an engineer. I can solution proposals. I can review them. And I have, in terms of, but I'm not a person that would actually go on contract. And I
Right.
think probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from one of my mentors, as an owner, he said, don't ever be billable. He said, if you go be billable, the customer is only going to want the owner from now on.
Yeah.
And how are you going to take that 100% profit out of your books, when you start getting people and you have to come off contract?
Yeah.
And so, at the time, when I was struggling, I thought, oh man, if I had some billable work, that'd be like a savior, right? But he was right, because if you're working on contract, you're not really working, you're working in your business, not on your business, as they say.
So
And
Mike, yeah, so so you touched on quite a number of
I'm
topics and
sorry.
areas,
Yeah,
and it's all good. And so
I went off the races.
no, it's all good. It's good. It's good. And so but following through that thought process of you navigating that space, what are some of the first steps businesses in your mind should consider to position themselves as prime contractors?
So, that's a good question, and I think for me, and maybe it might be a hot take, but I think you should always be priming. Whether it's a one person job, or a two, I mean, or a product. I think you should always be priming.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is that a lot of people, they get scared. They go, "Oh, well, what if I win?" And that kind of goes to the access to capital. And Ryan touched on it in the earlier session, which is when you have a government contract and
Hmm.
you're in the Beltway, you can go anywhere and get money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much like a cosigner, if you will. I mean, you can get factoring. I mean, there's uh, you know. Uh, all kinds of different funding streams that you can get once you have a government
Right.
contract. So, for those that are going, oh, that's a $500,000 contract. I don't know if I could do it. You can go after it, win it, and you can go get the money afterwards.
What would you say was some of the was helpful to you in your experience? Was it through uh, uh, perhaps pursuing a GSA mass contract vehicle award as a
So, so
pathway? How so along the lines of building past performance, what was along that path for you?
So for me, it was like I said, it was sort of the building of the prime contracts, and it was you know, for me, it was if I went after a one person and I got it, then I would go after a three, then I go after five. And then, eventually I put a team together in 2015 and we won like a $49 million contract with 173 people. So we went from 5 employees to about 120 employees overnight in 2015. Um, and that's when I went to the OPM course at Harvard Business School to kind of learn how to try to be a professional CEO. But in terms of building the portfolio, when you first start out, and Ryan mentioned this, you have to be broad, but I don't. I think as a small business, you have to be real also.
Hmm.
And they know you're not a large business, so if you go in and you can say I can do everything from construction to light bulbs to colonoscopies, they're going to look at you crazy. But if you go in and you have sort of a defined, narrow, or maybe it's broad, but it's confined, it's concise. There's a rhyme and a reason to it.
Like
Um,
identifying your niche, you would
E-
say?
Essentially, yeah, but I mean, and that goes into also how you develop your pipeline, right? Because as you develop this past performance, right, you can start developing a pipeline that is a lot tighter. And so
Mhm.
while you may start very broad, and you're going, I'm going to go after a lending closet, I'm going to go after some people in a warehouse. Once we started getting some momentum within the non-medical case management space for veterans, we were able to really put together and start going after proposals that were easy for us to respond to the RFI, easy for us to respond to the proposal so we could put out a high quality proposal at a good price really quickly.
Uh,
And and once we got to that point is when we had that big growth with the $50 million win. We lost the recompete in 2018, so we had a big come down. Then and and we've ebbed and flowed. We've been from 5 to 120 back down to 60. Now we're up about 170 FTE. So, scaling up and down is something that, hopefully you never have to scale down. But I don't know too many government contractors that at some point haven't had to, optimize their manpower. So,
but just to continue on that thought of those challenges that you faced there, what have been some of the can you share any other experiences of what you've done to overcome those challenges?
sure. Well, and so I do a lot of panels and I talk to a lot of CEOs from GovCons. And from Mantech to to just hung my shingle. And everybody is going through the same issue right now, which is finding good people and keeping them. And COVID made things a little more difficult, and the culture's changing back now to where everybody wants to, people are wanted in the office. And there's an interesting sort of push and pull between people that are extremely talented and well paid and can
Yeah.
sort of make those demands, and people that may have a more broader skill set that a lot of people have. They may be forced to go back in an office. But in terms of personal challenges for me, or for the company, really it was just about, you hear about it all the time, is it was getting the right people in the right seat, facing the right direction, rowing at the same stroke. And I have that now, and it has freed up a tremendous amount of my time. And I say that in a grateful way, because the people that I hired are much better at doing what doing what I was doing than me doing it. I mean, I'm not a professional operations guy, so got a professional operations guy. Guess what? Operations got much better. And I think as a business owner, that especially if you've been in it a while, it gets hard to let stuff go because you're used to doing it your way. And
Hmm.
if you can let it go, my experience has been that and if you hire the right person, that you're going to see how much better at the job you could have actually been if that had been your specialty, I guess is the nice way to say it.
Yeah.
When I hired a CFO, she was like, it's like you left all kinds of money on the table, by not billing right or this Clint or that Clint, and so, when you get to those stages, putting the right people in the right places, I think is critical.
So I think you touched on something that's leading into my next question here is what are some effective strategies for managing the financial risk that comes with prime contracting? And so you mentioned about hiring a CFO. Are there any others you can think of?
For me, I needed a technical writer. I needed and I think every GovCon CEO, everybody kind of, derides the BD people, like, oh, they're going to ask for a couple hundred K and hang around for 18 months and then, be out or whatever. But, and this kind of goes back to my strategy when it comes to recruiting, which is long term. Like the people that I have, I recruited over weeks or years.
Yeah.
I almost consider it like courting a little bit because if you want to get an A player, they're going to be somewhere already and they're going to be doing well, right? And so you have to get them way ahead of when they already are starting to think about they're going to move because and so like our executive vice president, I started talking to him 4 years before I hired him, but we had won a proposal together. I'd seen him write. I really liked him. Like he's talented. He's made all of our stuff better. And but again, that was a 4 year process of like, hey, quarterly, like, hey, you want to go golf? You want to go do this? How's things going? What could be better? And so you're not going to get A players, I don't think, quickly or without effort, especially in those critical roles that you need as a founder to kind
Hmm.
of shore up your um, you know, amplify your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses is what you want to do with your hires.
Okay.
And
Uh,
part of that, I think, is being self-aware also of what those are.
Yeah. So I know earlier you started off mentioning that you knew right out the gate that priming was going to be your thing that you want to pursue. For someone who's, hasn't, done any contracting, subcontracting or the like, what advice would you give to someone who is, trying to determine, when or whether to pursue the contract as either as a prime versus partnering as a subcontractor.
So, I hope no one takes my advice as a negative, thinking subcontracts negative. I love subcontracting. You get checks and you don't have to worry about people generally.
Okay.
And once we had like 11 or 12 prime contracts, I was really wanting some subcontracts because I was wanting to get some money without having to do so much work. But I think it really you have to know yourself, you have to know your company, your capabilities, and you have to know the opportunity.
Hmm.
And I think depending on those factors makes the determination. I mean, we sub not often because our pipeline is tight with stuff that we prime and have prime for years. However, if we're trying to pivot, if we're trying to get into a new customer, a new capability, and there's nothing wrong with subbing whatsoever. I just think that the advice for new owners of go be a sub to learn the business is just incomplete and sort of overused a little
Hmm.
bit, especially when you can go out and you can prime on one or two people. You can get paid from DoD wide area workflow in 2 weeks if you call and say you're a small business. So it's not like you got to float a huge payroll for 90 days anymore either. You can almost get paid as you bill or as as people are working. So I think there's the opportunity to prime for small businesses has never been better.
Okay. So speaking of just to tag on the mention of pay there, um, uh, how can business secure capital to fund larger projects or operations required for contracting?
So I love my bank. It's Parabolis. Bruce Lyman's the president. They're fantastic. They're people. They don't act like a bank. And there's several different ways. In government contracting, you can get a conventional line of credit, right? A revolving line of credit that's probably based on your receivables. You can do factoring, which is basically once you bill, the bank's going to give you a certain percentage of what you bill. Usually, when you start, it's around 85%. Once you're a good customer, you can get up to 95%, and you can even get like 50 to 60% of your unbilled, but as long as the time cards are in. So that's factoring, right? Then you have mezzanine financing. If you wanted, if you need money for growth or an acquisition, that's a little less expensive than factoring, not as inexpensive as a revolving line. So, in terms of flexibility and cost, the revolving line is going to be your cheapest. In terms of, access, quickly to capital, and the ability to get money quickly at factoring is very good as well. I've not used mezzanine financing yet. The acquisition that we're working on is through a seller's note. So, but factoring, revolving line, I've done both of those, and they both serve a purpose for what the size that you may be when you need them.
Okay. Would you have any recommendations on any financial options type to consider?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Me, so like for a veteran-owned business, what type of financial option would you recommend?
So I wouldn't know if it would necessarily be about your designation. I think it'd be more about the type of business you're in, right? Because if you're going to be in construction, you're going to need bonding. You're going to need, some different things than if you're in a services business. Um, and then, so I think really it depends on the type of business and then where you are in your business, how large you are. If you're and I don't know what the exact numbers would be, but let's just say if you're under $2 million or $1 million a year in revenue, factoring is probably going to be really expensive. But if you hit a big win, it's going to be great in terms of growth because you'll be able to not have any issues with payroll or sustaining that growth. So. I think it just, it's really like the prime sub question, right? You kind of have to make the determination based on what's best for your business and what's best, what your needs are. And even an example, when I won that $50 million contract, I had a different bank at the time. They were a factoring company, and I just drove to the headquarters with the contract and was like, hey, I need 50K today to stand up this contract. And they said, well, we don't do that. I said, well, you guys need to do it today. And so they looked at the contract, they verified it, and like 30 minutes later, they came out with a check.
Okay.
So if you get a big win and the first bank says no, go to the next bank down the block, they'll say yes.
Awesome, awesome. So hypothetically, like, so let's say have a small business who's doing well in the contracting space, and now they're looking to pursue opportunities where there's potential competition against larger players in the contracting space. Um, um, what would you say, small business can do to compete against those largest players in the space?
I've never, and maybe I'm twisted, but I've always thought that small businesses sort of had an advantage. I mean, we can be flexible, we can be much more cost effective as long as you're able to explain your ability to scale in terms of the size of the contract, or you can find a partner that has scale in terms of past performance. I mean, we won that $50 million contract, and I was the prime, and I had a $56,000 past performance. Now, the evaluation criteria scored the subcontractor past performance equally with the prime past performance, right? So those things had to line up in order for that to work. And that's not going to work every time. But in each situation, there's always little nuances that you can work um, to try and find out what's the best possible strategy for you and your business, or your business and partners.
Awesome, awesome. Just doing a quick time hack here, where we like 5 minutes to the end of this session. What sort of advice do you have for veteran-owned businesses looking to scale their operations and secure larger prime contracts?
Bid, bid often, bid as often as you can. Um, Bid as much as you can. Respond to RFIs. get in front of the customer. If you're a CEO or a founder, get in the marketplace, make sure you're outward facing, make sure you're talking to the industry, like sessions like these. Um, um, but I think veterans innately are resilient and don't have a lot of quit in them. So I think that's probably why largely veteran-owned businesses have a greater rate of success over the long term than a lot of other businesses do. So kind of like how you started, I think you know. Keeping your mind and your energy and your focus. Government is so big, it's easy to see a shiny squirrel and be off on the races somewhere. I've wasted probably $100,000 on proposals I should have never started writing. So, when I talk to students about GovCon, I talk about people, platforms, and processes. And those are kind of the three things that you need. And if you're just starting out, those are probably some of the things that you should really focus on is your people, your processes, and your people, your platforms, and your processes. And of course, at first, you're probably not going to have GovWin and Salesforce and all these things, but you can get GovTribe and you can get Zoho or, whatever, versions that you need in order to make sure that you are capturing the information that you need to be successful. And so putting those systems in place, um, which if you're a business owner and you want to know how we did ours, reach out. I'm happy to do it to you. Happy to show you how we do our stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's figuring out, for yourself who you are and what you want to do and the impact you want to make and the impact in the industry and the community that you want to make. And
Mhm.
I think knowing that also helps you recruit and helps you retain people and helps people stay true to the mission and true to your customers.
Awesome, awesome, good stuff. And so, um, uh, another question here is, can you share any insights for building strong past performance to win contracts?
Execute exceptionally. I mean, that's it. I mean, short answer. In
Yeah.
order to get good past performance, you need to execute exceptionally, and sometimes that can be difficult, but that's the short answer.
Awesome, awesome.
What's up, Eric? All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Thanks,
guys.
guys. We gotta
Appreciate
keep it
you.
moving. I appreciate you guys.
No problem.
We
It's
got the
so
people. We want to give people a chance to move to the next session.
it's a
Awesome.
So,
pleasure, Anthony. Thank you
hey,
so much.
by the
Great
way, I
question.
know that next time I gotta give everyone an hour because you guys all talk. I can't even imagine if Caesar was on here; it would have been nuts. So
Uh,
you would never got a word out, Michael.
I know. Oh, I know how to give Caesar.
Gotta get Caesar. All right,
Yeah,
good
I
stuff.
sit on the other side closest to the panelists from them. That
There
way I
you
get
go.
questions first. All
Yeah, there you go. Take the mic away. Thanks,
right,
guys.
man.
Hey,
That's it.
appreciate you.
Talk to you soon.
All right, everyone, we'll move to the next session.